Carl Jung, quote, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. Carl Jung spoke these words decades ago, yet they cut through the noise of modern psychology like a blade through silk. Have you ever noticed that the people who trigger you most intensely seem to appear everywhere you go? You know exactly what I'm talking about. That coworker who pushes every single button you have, the family member who knows precisely how to make your blood boil, the stranger in line who somehow manages to embody everything you can't stand about humanity. You tell yourself it's coincidence, bad luck, wrong place, wrong time. But what if I told you there's something far more mysterious happening here? What if these encounters aren't random at all, but your psyche's way of speaking a language you've never learned to understand? The uncomfortable truth is this: the same emotional triggers keep showing up in your life because there's something inside you that hasn't been resolved. Something hidden, something you've been running from without even knowing it. Carl Jung, one of the greatest scholars of the human mind, discovered something that most people spend their entire lives avoiding. He found that the qualities we despise most in others are often the very qualities we've buried deepest within ourselves. The things that make us recoil, that make our skin crawl, that make us want to scream, these aren't accidents, they're mirrors. And your unconscious mind is holding up these mirrors everywhere you go, desperately trying to show you something you refuse to see. Think about it for a moment. That person who gets under your skin more than anyone else, what specific behaviors drive you absolutely insane? Is it their arrogance, their neediness, their selfishness, their weakness, their aggression? Hold that image in your mind, because we're about to uncover something that will change how you see everything. Jung called this denied part of yourself the shadow, not the evil dark force that popular culture makes it out to be, but simply the aspects of your personality that you've deemed unacceptable, the parts of yourself you've locked away in the basement of your consciousness because they don't fit the image you want to project to the world. Here's what happens when you exile parts of yourself. They don't disappear. They don't fade away quietly. Instead, they begin to show up in the people around you with startling clarity. Your unconscious mind starts projecting these hidden aspects onto others, and suddenly you're surrounded by people who embody everything you claim you're not. The narcissist triggers you because you've buried your own healthy self-regard. The victim mentality infuriates you because you refuse to acknowledge where you play small in your own life. The aggressive person makes your blood boil because you've never learned to access your own healthy anger. The weak person disgusts you because you're terrified of your own vulnerability. This isn't about blame. This isn't about making you wrong. This is about recognizing a pattern that's been running your life from behind the scenes, pulling strings you didn't even know existed. Ask yourself this: why do certain people bother you while they don't seem to affect others the same way? Why can your friend be completely unbothered by someone who makes you want to crawl out of your skin? The answer lies not in them, but in what they're reflecting back to you. Jung understood that what we resist in others reveals what we resist in ourselves. The intensity of your reaction is directly proportional to how deeply you've buried that particular aspect of your own nature. The more violently you reject something in another person, the more likely it is that you're rejecting it in yourself. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Your unconscious doesn't just randomly assign these projections. It's incredibly intelligent, almost like it has its own agenda. It keeps bringing you the same lessons, the same triggers, the same types of people, until you finally get the message it's trying to send. You might change jobs, cities, even countries, but somehow the same patterns follow you. The controlling boss, the unreliable friend, the manipulative partner. Different faces, same energy. Different names, same triggers. Your shadow keeps showing up in new costumes, performing the same play, hoping you'll eventually recognize the actor behind the mask. The moment you start to see this pattern, something shifts. The external drama begins to lose its grip on you because you realize it was never really about them at all. It was always about you coming home to the parts of yourself you've been running from. This is what Jung meant when he said that everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. He wasn't being poetic. He was giving us a practical map for psychological freedom. But most people miss this entirely. They spend their whole lives convinced that the problem is out there, They hop from relationship to relationship, job to job, city to city, always certain that the next situation will be different. They never realize they're carrying their triggers with them like invisible luggage, unpacking the same emotional patterns wherever they land. The people who trigger you aren't your enemies, they're your teachers. They're showing up in your life to point you toward the parts of yourself that need integration, the parts that need to come home. Consider this: every person who has ever pushed your buttons has been holding up a mirror, showing you something about yourself that you couldn't see any other way. That annoying coworker isn't just randomly irritating, they're reflecting back a quality that exists within you, probably in a form you've never allowed yourself to express or acknowledge. The person who seems impossibly selfish might be showing you that you've been selfless to the point of self-abandonment. The one who appears weak might be reflecting your own disowned vulnerability. The arrogant one might be mirroring the healthy confidence you've never allowed yourself to own. This revelation changes everything. Instead of being a victim of other people's behavior, you become curious about what they're revealing. Instead of feeling powerless in the face of triggers, you start to recognize them as breadcrumbs leading you back to lost parts of yourself. Jung called this process individuation, the journey of becoming whole by reclaiming and integrating all aspects of your personality, even the ones you'd rather pretend don't exist. It's not about becoming perfect, it's about becoming complete. The shadow isn't your enemy, it's the storehouse of your disowned power, creativity, and authentic self-expression. Every quality you've rejected in yourself is still there, waiting in the wings, often containing exactly what you need to step into your full potential. But integration requires something most people aren't willing to give: radical honesty about who you really are beneath the carefully constructed persona you present to the world. It requires admitting that you contain multitudes, that you're capable of both light and darkness, strength and weakness, love and selfishness. The truth is, you're not as good as you think you are, and you're not as bad as you fear you might be. You're human, which means you contain the full spectrum of human possibility. The people who trigger you are simply showing you the parts of that spectrum you've been denying. When you begin to own these disavowed aspects of yourself, something miraculous happens. The people who used to drive you crazy start to lose their power over you, not because they've changed, but because you're no longer projecting your shadow onto them. You're seeing them as they actually are, separate from your own psychological material. This is the beginning of true freedom. The moment you stop making other people responsible for your emotional reactions, you reclaim your power. The moment you recognize projection for what it is, you step out of the victim role and into conscious choice. But recognizing the pattern is just the first step. The real work lies in what comes next, learning to integrate these shadow aspects rather than continuing to exile them, learning to own your full humanity rather than maintaining the exhausting pretense of being only your good qualities. Your unconscious mind has been trying to teach you this lesson through every trigger, every conflict, every person who has ever made you want to scream. It's been speaking to you in a language you haven't understood, using the people in your life as messengers carrying parts of yourself back home. The question is, are you ready to start listening? Are you ready to consider that the person who irritates you most might be your greatest teacher? Are you willing to look in the mirror they're holding up and see not an enemy, but a lost part of yourself waiting to be reclaimed? This shift in perspective changes everything. Suddenly, your triggers become doorways, your conflicts become opportunities, your most difficult relationships become your most powerful tools for growth and self-understanding. The people who challenge you aren't obstacles to your peace, they're invitations to wholeness. They're showing you where your work lies, pointing you toward the aspects of yourself that are ready to come out of hiding and be integrated into your conscious awareness. Jung understood that this process of shadow integration isn't optional. If you want to live an authentic, powerful life, the parts of yourself that you exile don't just go away. They continue to run your life from the shadows, attracting people and situations that will trigger them until you finally turn around and face what you've been running from. The intensity of your triggers is actually a measure of how much power you've given away to your shadow. The stronger your reaction, the more energy is locked up in that disowned aspect of yourself. When you reclaim that energy through integration, you don't just stop being triggered, you become more fully yourself. This isn't about becoming someone new. It's about becoming who you've always been beneath the layers of conditioning, shame, and societal expectations that taught you to hide parts of yourself away. It's about reclaiming your birthright to be fully human, fully alive, fully yourself. The patterns that have been running your life are about to be revealed in a way that will change how you see every relationship, every conflict, every challenge you've ever faced. The language your unconscious has been speaking is about to become clear, and with that clarity comes the power to transform not just how you relate to others, but how you relate to yourself. Your triggers have been breadcrumbs all along, leading you back to the treasure of your own wholeness. The question is whether you're ready to follow them home. Those breadcrumbs you've been following are leading somewhere specific. Your unconscious mind isn't randomly throwing triggers at you, it's speaking in a sophisticated language that most people never learn to decode. Once you start to understand this language, everything changes. What if the person who irritates you most is actually delivering a message that could transform your entire life? What if every difficult relationship, every emotional storm, every pattern that keeps repeating is your psyche's way of trying to communicate something essential about who you really are? Jung discovered that the unconscious mind operates like a master storyteller, weaving symbols, synchronicities, and situations into your daily experience to guide you toward wholeness. It doesn't speak in words, it speaks in experiences, emotions, and most powerfully, through the people it places in your path. Your unconscious is constantly scanning your environment, magnetizing certain types of people toward you and pushing others away. It's not random, it's purposeful. Every person who triggers an intense emotional response in you is carrying a piece of psychological information that your conscious mind needs to integrate. Think about the last time someone made you absolutely furious, not mildly annoyed, but genuinely enraged. What was it about their behavior that pushed you over the edge? That moment of rage wasn't just an emotional reaction, it was a transmission from your unconscious, highlighting something that needs your attention. The intensity of your emotional response is directly proportional to how important the message is. The bigger the trigger, the more significant the shadow aspect that's trying to emerge. Your psyche doesn't whisper when it comes to important lessons. It screams through the people who make you want to lose your mind. This is why you can't simply avoid your triggers and expect to grow. Your unconscious will keep manufacturing situations and relationships that activate them until you finally get the message. You can block people, change jobs, move cities, but the pattern will follow you because the pattern lives inside you. Jung called these patterns archetypes, universal themes that show up in every human life in different costumes, but with the same essential energy. The victim, the tyrant, the martyr, the rebel, the perfectionist. These archetypal energies exist within every person, and your unconscious uses your relationships to show you which ones need your attention. That controlling person who drives you insane, they might be reflecting your own inner tyrant that you've been too afraid to acknowledge. The victim who drains your energy, they could be mirroring your own disowned powerlessness. The rebel who seems destructive, they might be showing you the healthy rebellion you've never allowed yourself to express. Your unconscious doesn't care about your comfort, it cares about your wholeness. It will create whatever experiences are necessary to bring you face to face with the parts of yourself that need integration, even if those experiences are painful, confusing, or seemingly destructive. This is why you keep attracting the same types of relationships. Your unconscious has an agenda that supersedes your conscious preferences. While you're looking for someone who makes you feel safe and comfortable, your psyche is looking for someone who will trigger your growth, even if that growth comes wrapped in conflict and challenge. The person you think you want and the person your unconscious brings you are often completely different. You want the partner who never challenges you, but your unconscious brings you the one who pushes every button you have. You want the boss who appreciates you, but your unconscious delivers the one who forces you to confront your relationship with authority. This isn't cruel or unfair, it's intelligent. Your unconscious knows that comfort doesn't lead to growth, that integration requires friction, that becoming whole means facing the parts of yourself you'd rather avoid. But here's what most people miss. The moment you start to understand this language, you gain incredible power over your life. Instead of being at the mercy of your triggers, you become curious about what they're trying to teach you. Instead of seeing difficult people as obstacles, you recognize them as messengers carrying exactly what you need to evolve. Jung understood that individuation, the process of becoming your authentic self, isn't a comfortable journey. It requires what he called a confrontation with the shadow, a willingness to face the aspects of yourself that you've spent your life trying to hide or deny. This confrontation doesn't happen in meditation or therapy alone. It happens in the arena of relationship, where your shadow gets activated and projected onto others. Every conflict, every trigger, every person who makes your blood boil is an opportunity to reclaim another piece of your disowned self. The goal isn't to eliminate your shadow, it's to integrate it, to stop projecting it onto others and start owning it as part of your full humanity. This integration transforms not just how you see yourself, but how you show up in relationships. When you own your capacity for selfishness, you stop being triggered by selfish people and start setting healthy boundaries. When you acknowledge your own aggression, you stop being intimidated by aggressive people and start accessing your own power. When you accept your vulnerability, you stop being disgusted by weakness and start offering genuine compassion. This is the paradox of shadow work. The qualities you learn to accept in yourself become the qualities you can handle in others without losing your center. The aspects of humanity you integrate internally become aspects you can meet externally with equanimity rather than reactivity. Your triggers are actually showing you where your next level of freedom lies. Every person who pushes your buttons is pointing toward a prison cell you didn't even know you were locked in, the prison of rejecting parts of your own humanity. But integration requires more than intellectual understanding. It requires feeling your way into these disowned aspects, allowing yourself to experience them without judgment or immediate correction. It means acknowledging that yes, you do have selfish impulses, aggressive tendencies, victim patterns, controlling behaviors. This acknowledgement doesn't make you a bad person, it makes you a complete person. It gives you access to the full range of human experience instead of limiting yourself to the narrow band of qualities you've deemed acceptable. The truth is, every quality exists on a spectrum, and health lies not in eliminating certain qualities, but in being able to access them consciously, rather than having them control you unconsciously. Healthy selfishness becomes self-care. Integrated aggression becomes assertiveness. Owned vulnerability becomes authentic intimacy. Your unconscious has been trying to show you this through every difficult relationship you've ever had. That ex-partner who seemed impossible. They were reflecting aspects of yourself that were ready to be integrated. That family member who knows exactly how to hurt you. They're showing you where you're still abandoning yourself. The people who trigger you most aren't random. They're specifically chosen by your unconscious to deliver precisely the medicine you need, even when that medicine tastes bitter. Your psyche is like a master physician, prescribing exactly the right experiences to cure you of the illusion that you're only your good qualities. This is why you can't heal your triggers by avoiding them. Avoidance just pushes the shadow further underground, where it continues to operate outside your conscious awareness. The only way through is integration, owning, accepting, and consciously relating to these disowned aspects of yourself. When you start to see your triggers as invitations rather than attacks, everything shifts. That person who used to ruin your day becomes a teacher, showing you where your work lies. That situation that used to drain your energy becomes an opportunity to reclaim another piece of your power. Jung called this process active imagination, consciously engaging with the symbolic content that your unconscious presents through your daily experiences. Instead of just reacting to triggers, you start asking what they're trying to show you about yourself. The controlling person might be showing you that you need to develop healthy boundaries rather than trying to control others' responses to you. The victim might be reflecting your own disowned powerlessness that needs to be transformed into conscious choice. The aggressive person might be pointing toward your own buried anger that needs expression rather than repression. Your unconscious speaks in metaphors and symbols, using the people in your life as characters in a story about your own psychological development. When you learn to read this story, you stop being a victim of your circumstances and start being the conscious author of your growth. This doesn't mean that difficult people aren't actually difficult. It means that your reaction to their difficulty reveals something about your own inner landscape that's ready to transform. You can acknowledge that someone's behavior is problematic while simultaneously asking what that behavior is activating within you. The moment you make this shift from blame to curiosity, from victim to student, you reclaim your power. You're no longer at the mercy of other people's behavior because you're using their behavior as information about your own healing process. This is the language your unconscious has been speaking all along. Every trigger is a breadcrumb. Every difficult person is a messenger. Every challenging situation is a classroom where you can learn to integrate another aspect of your humanity. But integration isn't a one-time event. It's an ongoing process. As you integrate one shadow aspect, your unconscious will present you with the next one. As you heal one pattern, a deeper pattern will emerge. This isn't failure, it's the natural progression of becoming whole. The goal isn't to reach a place where nothing triggers you. The goal is to develop the capacity to meet your triggers with consciousness rather than reactivity, to use them as information rather than seeing them as attacks on your peace. When you understand that your unconscious is always working in service of your wholeness, even when its methods seem harsh or confusing, you develop a different relationship with challenge. You start to trust the process even when you can't see where it's leading. Your triggers become allies, pointing you toward freedom. Your difficult relationships become sacred contracts for mutual awakening. Your most challenging experiences become the very medicine that transforms you from a fragment of yourself into the complete human being you were always meant to be. The language of connection that life is revealing to you isn't spoken with words. It's spoken through experience, emotion, and most powerfully, through the mirror of relationship. Every person who has ever triggered you has been fluent in this language, delivering messages from your unconscious about who you really are, beneath the mask you wear for the world. Now that you're starting to understand this language, the real transformation can begin. The patterns that have been running your life unconsciously are ready to be brought into the light of awareness, where they can be transformed from unconscious compulsions into conscious choices. The war between who you think you should be and who you actually are is about to end, not through defeating one side, but through integrating both into a more complete understanding of your full humanity. The war is over. That internal battle between who you think you should be and who you actually are, it ends the moment you stop fighting parts of yourself and start integrating them. This is where everything changes. Can you feel it? That subtle shift happening right now as these insights land. Your nervous system is already beginning to relax as you realize you don't have to be perfect anymore. You don't have to maintain the exhausting pretense of being only your socially acceptable qualities. The people who used to drain your energy are about to lose their power over you, not because they've changed, but because you're no longer giving them your shadow to carry. You're taking back responsibility for your own emotional landscape. This is what Jung meant by individuation, not becoming someone new, but becoming who you've always been, beneath the layers of conditioning that taught you to hide parts of yourself away. It's the return to your original wholeness, the integration of everything you've spent your life trying to escape. When you stop projecting your shadow onto others, something miraculous happens in your relationships. You start seeing people as they actually are, rather than as containers for your disowned psychological material. That person who used to trigger you constantly, suddenly you can see their humanity without losing your center. The transformation isn't gradual, it's immediate. The moment you own an aspect of your shadow, you stop being controlled by it when it appears in others. The moment you acknowledge your own capacity for selfishness, selfish people stop having the power to destabilize you. The moment you accept your own aggression, aggressive people can no longer intimidate you. This is the paradox of shadow integration. What you resist in yourself, you cannot handle in others. What you accept in yourself, you can meet in others with equanimity. Your triggers were never about them. They were always about the war you were waging against parts of yourself. Now that the war is ending, you have access to energy that was previously locked up in maintaining your false persona. The energy you used to spend rejecting aspects of yourself becomes available for creating, loving, and living authentically. You stop being a fraction of yourself and become a whole human being. But this integration brings a new kind of challenge. When you're no longer projecting your shadow, you have to take full responsibility for your life. You can't blame others for your reactions anymore. You can't make them responsible for your emotional states. This responsibility is terrifying and liberating in equal measure. The people in your life will start responding to you differently because you're no longer energetically asking them to carry parts of yourself. That needy person might become less needy around you because you're not projecting your own disowned neediness onto them. That controlling person might relax their grip because you're not triggering their need to control through your own unconscious power struggles. Your relationships become cleaner, more honest, more real. Instead of unconscious psychological contracts where you agree to carry each other's shadows, you start having conscious connections based on who you actually are, rather than who you're pretending to be. This doesn't mean your relationships become conflict-free. It means the conflicts become productive, rather than destructive. Instead of fighting about surface issues that are really about deeper psychological patterns, you start addressing what's actually happening. Instead of projecting blame, you start taking ownership. The language of connection that life has been trying to teach you becomes fluent now. You start recognizing when someone is projecting their shadow onto you, and instead of absorbing it or fighting it, you can compassionately redirect them back to themselves. You start noticing when you're tempted to project, and you can consciously choose to own your reaction instead. This new way of relating transforms everything. Your family dynamics shift as you stop playing the unconscious roles that kept dysfunctional patterns alive. Your work relationships become more authentic as you stop trying to be who you think you should be and start being who you actually are. Your romantic partnerships become more intimate as you drop the masks that kept you separate. But the most profound transformation happens in your relationship with yourself. The internal critic that used to torment you with shame about your unacceptable qualities starts to quiet down. You develop what Jung called self-compassion, the ability to meet all aspects of yourself with kindness rather than judgment. You realize that your selfishness, when owned and integrated, becomes healthy self-care. Your aggression, when acknowledged and channeled, becomes powerful assertiveness. Your vulnerability, when accepted and honored, becomes the foundation for genuine intimacy. Every shadow quality contains a gift that was hidden beneath layers of shame and rejection. This integration doesn't make you perfect, it makes you real. You stop trying to be a spiritual ideal and start being a complete human being. You stop apologizing for having needs, desires, flaws, and limitations. You start appreciating the full spectrum of your humanity, instead of trying to edit out the parts that make you uncomfortable. The freedom is intoxicating. No more exhausting vigilance about maintaining your image. No more terror that someone might see through your persona to who you really are. No more energy wasted on rejecting parts of yourself. You can finally relax into being human. Your triggers still exist, but they become teachers rather than tormentors. When someone activates an emotional response in you, your first question becomes, what is this showing me about myself, rather than why are they doing this to me? You become curious about your reactions rather than victimized by them. This curiosity transforms pain into wisdom. Every challenging experience becomes raw material for deeper self-understanding. Every difficult person becomes a mirror reflecting something you need to integrate. Every conflict becomes an opportunity to practice conscious relating rather than unconscious reactivity. The signs that life is revealing this new language of connection to you are everywhere. Once you know how to look, you start noticing synchronicities, meaningful coincidences that seem to confirm you're on the right path. You start attracting different types of people, or the same people start responding to you differently. Your dreams become more vivid and symbolic, offering guidance from your unconscious. You develop what Jung called psychological vision, the ability to see the deeper patterns beneath surface events. You recognize when someone is in the grip of their shadow and needs compassion rather than confrontation. You can sense when a situation is trying to teach you something rather than simply being a random annoyance. This vision extends to your past as well. Relationships that seemed purely destructive reveal their hidden gifts. People who hurt you are seen as unconscious teachers who showed you exactly what needed healing. Experiences that felt meaningless at the time are recognized as essential steps in your individuation process. You start to understand that everything that happened to you was somehow necessary for becoming who you are today, not because it was pleasant or fair, but because it carved out the exact spaces in your psyche that needed to be carved out for wholeness to emerge. This doesn't mean you become passive or accept harmful behavior. It means you respond from consciousness rather than reactivity. You set boundaries from clarity rather than anger. You choose your relationships from wholeness rather than neediness. You engage in conflict from authenticity rather than defensiveness. The new language of connection isn't about always being peaceful, it's about being real. Sometimes being real means saying no. Sometimes it means expressing anger. Sometimes it means walking away. But these responses come from an integrated place rather than a wounded place. You stop trying to be understood by everyone and start being authentic with the people who matter. You stop seeking validation from others and start validating yourself. You stop trying to fix or change people and start accepting them as they are while taking care of your own needs. This acceptance extends to yourself as well. You stop trying to become someone else and start becoming more fully yourself. You stop fighting your nature and start expressing it consciously. You stop hiding your gifts and start sharing them generously. The energy that was previously trapped in shadow projection becomes available for creativity, service, and love. You have more to give because you're no longer depleted by the exhausting work of maintaining a false self. You can love others more fully because you're no longer rejecting parts of yourself. Your presence in the world becomes medicine for others who are still trapped in shadow projection. Without trying to teach or fix anyone, you become a living example of what's possible when someone stops waging war against their own humanity. People start seeking you out, drawn to the authenticity you radiate. They might not understand why they feel safe around you, but they do. It's because you're no longer unconsciously asking them to carry your shadow. You're taking full responsibility for your own psychological material. This is the gift you give the world when you do your shadow work. You stop adding to the collective unconsciousness and start contributing to collective healing. Every person who integrates their shadow makes it easier for others to integrate theirs. The ripple effects extend far beyond your personal relationships. You start making different choices about how you spend your time, energy, and attention. You're drawn to work that feels authentic rather than just secure. You choose relationships that support growth rather than just comfort. You make decisions from your integrated self rather than your wounded self. Life becomes an adventure in consciousness rather than a struggle for survival. Challenges become interesting rather than overwhelming. Other people become fascinating rather than threatening or boring. You start living from curiosity and enthusiasm rather than fear and reactivity. This is what it means to speak the language of connection that life has been trying to teach you. You connect with others through your shared humanity rather than your shared woundedness. You bond over growth rather than complaints. You inspire each other toward wholeness rather than enabling each other's limitations. The transformation isn't complete. It's ongoing. As you integrate one layer of shadow, another emerges. As you heal one pattern, a deeper pattern reveals itself. But now you trust the process. You understand that your psyche is always working in service of your wholeness, even when its methods are mysterious or uncomfortable. You've learned the most important lesson Jung taught, that becoming whole doesn't require perfection, it requires integration. It doesn't demand that you eliminate your shadow, but that you develop a conscious relationship with it. It doesn't ask you to become someone else, but to become more fully yourself. The signs are all around you now. The synchronicities pointing you toward your next evolution. The people showing up to mirror what needs integration. The situations challenging you to grow beyond your current limitations. You're finally fluent in the language your unconscious has been speaking all along. Your triggers have become your teachers. Your shadows have become your allies. Your wounds have become your wisdom. The war is over, and wholeness has won. This awareness is your liberation. Use it. Trust it. Live from it. The world needs who you become when you stop fighting yourself and start integrating yourself. The world needs your unique medicine, which can only emerge when you're no longer hiding parts of yourself away. Your individuation serves not just your own healing, but the healing of everyone whose life you touch. This is your invitation to step fully into that service, to become the integrated human being you were always meant to be. The language of connection is yours now. Speak it fluently, live it authentically, share it generously. Your wholeness is the gift the world has been waiting for.